Hello, hi. How you all doing? You're doing very quietly. Is everyone all right? Cool. I hope you've had a good expo so far, and I'm glad to see that there's not many men in the room, which I presume is to do with the fact that it's the FA Cup this afternoon. So, but not to worry, it's still got a couple of hours. So, my name is Ian Young. Welcome to this is Sober Services. It's one of the companies that I made. I have a few different brands that I run, all in the addiction world. So Sober Services is kind of the flagship. It's what I've been doing since 2008. The Addiction Roadshow is kind of a media version of that. So we go on the road and we talk about addictions to families and things. Addiction Interventions UK is something that I'm passionate about. Euro Detox is where I'm going next and moving into Europe, and I'm working with psychiatrists and things for that. So very briefly, I personally am a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. I was a 13-year homeless statistic, an intravenous drug user, chronic alcoholic, badass drunk. But I got sober in 2001, and you can read about in the book. I don't need to tell you about that now. Sober Services I started in 2008 as a result of I built rehabs across the UK, and I built low-cost treatment centres for just to change the way that treatment was sold in the UK, and I was very successful at it. But it was very hard work, and after 4 or 5 years of doing that, I was burnt out, and I decided that I was going to take a step back and I was going to reinvent myself in the format of Sober Services. So essentially Sober Services was a flip on that. So whereas my rehabs was treating 30 people with a handful of staff, Sober Services is treating one individual at a time with a handful of staff. So we load it the other way. I think I just told you most of that. And primarily what I'm known for in the addiction treatment world, which is where I hang out the most, is I'm an interventionist. So as an interventionist, some of you may be associating that with like Anthony Robbins, where he does a live intervention in the room and cures someone's depression and stuff like that. And that's a romantic way of looking at what I might be doing. But essentially addiction interventions take a lot longer, because at least when you're thinking about that classic intervention style, the person is willing to get help. What I do is I work with individuals, I work with the families first and then the individuals who don't want help. And that's what I'm known for across Europe, and I work in the Middle East and in Africa as well. And I'm an author of It's Not About Me, which is just my life story, really. It's quite funny. And it's got a lot of spirituality in it and the lessons that I've learned since I got sober. So it's a very light-hearted read, and you can read it in a couple of days sat on the potty. So addictions come in various disguises. Oh, I've got a laser. And first of all, what I really want to differentiate is the difference. Am I standing in front? Is the difference between an addiction and someone with addictive disease. The addiction is the person that turns up to you with a smoking habit, or someone that has been drinking for a while, or has an addiction to one substance, be it cocaine or something, and they know that they have a problem, and they know that they need to make some changes, and they go and see some help. Maybe they see a life coach or a hypnotherapist, and through a simple process, might take 1 or 2 sessions, that person is given sufficient reason to make some changes in their life, and they come out the other side and they stop, and they have a firm mental state, and they change their attitude towards the substance, and on they go, and they never really look back at it. It was almost like a blip in their life. Whereas addictive disease is it's considerably more different and intensely more difficult to work with. Addictive disease, we believe, is something that you're born with, and throughout your life you can look back at you can look back at your patterns, and you can see how you become obsessive around certain things or compulsive around certain things. So, for instance, in my life, I identify my addictive disease with how I was a bully at school. I would pick on people, on other children, as a way of changing the way that I felt about myself. So while I was bullying someone else, I was feeling better about myself. And that was the first evidence of how I was changing my own state in order to improve how I felt, which essentially is what addiction is about. Bloody hell, it's noisy. Addiction is about changing how I feel in order to get a different reaction from myself. And I just become entrapped with that. It's the reason why people use drugs, is because they make us feel so good. You know, we can hear all these bad stories about heroin, but the reality is that heroin makes me feel good, so I keep on doing it. But because I have addictive disease, I might stop using heroin but my mind will then search out something else for me to get attached to. So that I'll move across into other drugs, or I'm quite happy to go from heroin into methadone, or methadone into Subutex, or I'm quite happy to substitute beer for wine, or wine for spirits, or whatever it is. So there's a big difference in the genetic makeup of addiction, and probably more importantly is how we're going to treat the difference. So someone with addiction can simply be cured very quickly. But someone with addictive disease, it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to take something far more drastic, and they require a form of treatment that can't be explained by science particularly well. It's not a prescribing service, and that's, although I'm okay with prescribing services like methadone. Ultimately, if you're giving a drug addict more drugs, they're still a drug addict. You're not actually treating the addiction. You're simply shifting the addiction from an illegal drug to a legal drug. And actually, in my experience and the experience of my staff, we treat addictions with spiritual solutions. And that's really where our whole ethos has come from, because that's our understanding that that addictions and addictive disease is a disease of self. So we're selfish, self-centered, greedy, arrogant, egotistical. We want everything and we'll give very little. And that's the core of our spirit. So those of us that are more healed understand that spirituality is more about other people. It's about helping other people, seeing where you can bring value to other people's lives, living from a place of humanity rather than selfishness. And so in simple terms, addiction equals selfish and recovery equals selfless. Is that making sense to you all? The number one cause of relapse for people with addictive disease is always underestimating the disease. So for some people, we'll stop, maybe for a period. In the case of binge drinkers, they'll stop, but they'll never really stay stopped for too long to give themselves a real chance at changing their lives. And a binge drinker is a really good example of someone who thinks that this time they've stopped for the last 2 months and they're going to be able to drink without impunity. So they underestimate that actually they have this disease that works through them, so that when they start they can't stop, and when they stop they can't stop themselves from starting again. And that's the real crux about the treatment that we're trying to do here. We're trying to treat people and help them understand how to stay stopped, because stopping is just the first stage. You can go to a detox hospital and you can physically withdraw and you can stop, but the real hard part of treating all addictions is teaching someone how to stay stopped. And the crux of that has to be for that person to respect the fact that they've got this disease that's running through them that's telling them that they haven't got it. It's kind of crazy. The addiction is telling us that we haven't got it. And so we need to encourage people to know that there's a whole journey ahead of them. And the first 6 months is a fabulous achievement, but it takes a lot longer. And staying in recovery is not a destination, it's a journey. It's, I am in recovery. My staff are in recovery. We're happy and delighted to be sober, but that doesn't mean that we can start drinking again, or we will, because of our addictive disease, will trigger that, and that will start off again, and I will be back in the same place as I was before. I am rushing, but these clickers not working very well. So, addiction is a equal opportunities disease. It affects people from all families, all race, colour, creeds, religions, all backgrounds. There isn't a single segment of society that isn't affected by addiction. You may associate a heroin addict with someone from an estate in Liverpool, but the reality is, there's the story of the Tetra Pak heir who had a place in Knightsbridge. Him and his wife, they were both smoking crack and using a lot of heroin, and they were in the 1% of the population. A lot of our clients in sober services are the 1%ers. Primarily, sober services is geared up in the private sector, so we treat people from middle class and people with a disposable income. But the addiction is across the range. It doesn't discriminate between anything: sexuality, colour, creed, religion, whatever. So I don't want us to get stuck in the stereotype of a needle-using junkie from Liverpool or East London or whatever. But I want us to understand that addiction comes and affects all families. Think about alcoholism, for instance. You can be as happy as the next person, materially wealthy as the next person, and yet you still have an alcoholic in your family. I should have said that addiction is said to affect 1 in 10 people, and that addiction then affects 1 in 4 families. So there's various ways of spotting how there is an addiction in someone, but one thing I should point out, if you're living with someone with addictive disease, that person is going to lie, cheat and steal to you and tell you that they don't have a problem. But I need you, if you're here because you're thinking about someone else, I need you to believe in your gut. I need you to trust yourself. If you think that they're lying to you, it's likely that they're lying to you. It's very common for me not to tell you the levels of my consumption. I don't want you to know just how much I'm destroying myself. I don't want you to know how much cocaine I'm using in case you're going to judge me or give me a hard time. I don't want you to be giving me an attitude about what I'm getting up to in case that's going to infringe on my access to more drink or drugs. So I'm going to hide, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to keep it hidden from you. You understand? So when you think that you can spot it, you probably can. I need you to believe in yourself. So these are typical examples of family members that have come to me and told me how they've attempted to control their drug addict or alcoholics drinking and drugging. And if you're here, maybe you'll identify with some of them. So they'll give them a silent treatment, kind of passive aggressiveness. The family may lie to them, say that they're going out when in fact they're staying in, so they don't have to face them. Making threats. If you don't stop, I'm going to, take away your car keys, and then not following through. Accommodating their demands. Okay, so here, let me give you some money so you can buy some drinks so you drink in the house so you don't have to go out and steal. Cancelling plans. All right, we're not going to go on holiday because you don't want to leave the house for too long because you need to be close to your source. It's my responsibility why they're drinking. It's because I didn't love them enough. Accepting responsibility for their addiction is nuts. Pretending. So, he doesn't have a problem. He just drinks a little bit too much at the weekends, but he's all right the rest of the time. Lecturing. So, giving the person you love a lecture about how the information that you know to be true about how alcohol is killing them. But the alcoholic doesn't really care that it's killing them because they're too busy wrapped up in getting the next drink. I knew that the drugs were killing me. I knew that my lifestyle was killing me, and that gave me enough feelings for me to feel dreadful about myself. And the only way that I knew to not feel dreadful about myself was to drink more. So lecturing wasn't something that really helped because I'm doing that to myself already. Avoiding. So I'd leave the house before they come in, or try and avoid them in different rooms, sit in different rooms at night. Relocating, so moving to a different part of the UK, moving out of London, thinking that the problem is going to go away, that if we just move and they hang out with different people. Hiding and destroying or throwing away their drugs or alcohol, so you find it and you throw it away and then they just go out and get some more. So do any of these ring any bells for anyone in this room? You don't have to break your anonymity, but just nodding is fine. And there were many others, so I kind of did them all there. But the reality is, in the long run, did it make a difference? Yes or no? And I'm telling you these are the ones that I've heard just recently when I was jotting them down. And the answer no comes all the way through. It doesn't make any difference. I'm going to tell you why. Someone once told me that when you start cutting, self-harming, this is a quote from a client. I didn't believe them. I recently started cutting and now I can't stop. I love the feeling of it. I love the blade against my skin. And you know what? I don't care if it kills me. And the similarities between that and any other substance addiction is uncanny. The reality is that when someone is cutting, they're cutting to change the way they feel, to escape an overwhelming fear or shame or guilt or pain. And they're cutting to change the pain. And they realize that it works. So they keep doing it. And we can see the visible scars wherever they are. And yet they carry on doing it because it works for them. And it's the same with drinking, and it's the same with drugging. If the addict is pleased with the help that you're giving them, you're probably enabling them. If the addict becomes angry, agitated, and restless with the help you're giving them, it probably means that you're actually helping them beyond anything that you can actually understand yourself. So when you're saying to them no, and they get angry about it, you are actually helping them. And you need to have the ability to follow through with your no's when they're getting agitated and not give in because of that reaction. and have the strength and courage, and I'm going to talk to you about this. Codependency is when a person is addicted to the addict. They assume responsibility for meeting the addict's needs and they neglect their own, okay? This is important. Enablers are people who knowingly or unknowingly protect the addicts from the natural consequences of their own actions. Now, I don't know any of you in this room, but I want you to know that these are the type of people that we work with all the time. People that are addicted to the addict, where they believe it's their responsibility to keep that person topped up with their drink or whatever, or people where they really don't want the addict to keep drinking, but they don't know how to stop them, and they are unable to face the argument that's coming up. So when you choose the lesser of two evils, always remember that it is still an evil. So you may think, well, I'm not going to get in an argument with them. That's the lesser of the two evils, but you're still allowing them to keep drinking or drugging. The sooner you realize that it's never going to go back the way it was, the sooner you can move forwards. Understand that your loved one will always remain active in their addiction while you continue to permit them to do that. It's just crazy. And there is going to be very little chance or hope for change until you take some drastic action. And that drastic action is going to be the type of action that brings upon that frown upon their face. They're going to get resistance to that. And when you get that resistance from them, that is the clue that you are going in the right direction. Because an addict wants to protect themselves. They want to protect their disease. They want to protect their supply. They don't want you to interrupt the fact that they're getting high. And they're going to do everything they can to push you away. This process is called tough love. And I really like the way that slide appears. And tough love is not BDSM. It's not bondage. It's nothing like that. It's actually a process that we call to describe the way that we're going to do interventions. And I call it tough love because we know that you love this person. That's why you're prepared to go through this work and engage with them. But it is tough, and it requires you to change your mentality about how you're dealing with them. And it means that when they cry out for money or when they cry out for a drink, that you actually say no because you love them, not because you don't love them. And that's what is where the enablers and the codependents get so difficult for them. The result of a sober intervention is that right there, right now, we'll see the results of that person as they momentarily come out of the mist, and for the first time they get to a point where they can see for themselves the hurt and harm that they're causing the people that they love. So I've been speeding through all this because I know that this is a limited amount of time, but I'm going to try and give you the explanation of how I do a sober intervention. I'm probably going to go off script. So when I come together, I get a call from the family and they'll say, I really need help with my son, brother, daughter, wife, whoever it is. And they come in and I'll come and do a home visit with them. And the first thing that I need to do is I need to get together all of the relevant people in the family that we cognitively understand love the person. So if in the case of little Johnny, the son, 25-year-old son, drinking and drugging, I get together his sisters, I get together his parents, whether they're separated, I get together the step-parents, relevant cousins that are still in the life, siblings, daughters, anyone that Johnny cognitively understands loves him. And he may not necessarily be on talking terms with them, but he understands that this person loves them. You understand? So I get to talk to all of these people, and I have to coach these family members in these three core elements: absolute love, complete honesty, and the firm boundaries of tough love. And this takes me, well, depending on how many people, between 20 and 40 hours. So when people phone me up and they say, can you help me with little Johnny? They're expecting me to come in and make magic with little Johnny. But I end up spending the first 20 to 40 hours with the family, coaching them through this process. And then we arrange a predetermined date where we're going to invite Johnny to join us, or we will go to Johnny, ideally first thing in the morning before Johnny has had time to drink or drug. So we catch him where he is in a state of acute withdrawal, hopefully, and therefore a little bit desperate in the first place. And in the structured process that I've taught the family members, we confront Johnny from a place of absolute love. Johnny, I love you, you're my son, you're my brother, but with complete honesty, but when you're drinking, I'm scared for your children. You go out drink driving, I think you're going to make a mess, have an accident. At work, you're very sloppy at work. I hear you're going to be get the sack or whatever it is. Absolute honesty of what it is that you are feeling, and this is making me feel scared, worried, dreading. I feel shame when I'm with you in the street, or whatever it is. We'll go and we'll find the emotions beforehand. And unless you accept the help that we're giving you today, then I have to ask you to leave the house. I take away your keys. I can't give you access to the children. You can't live here. You can't work here. We give that person consequences right here, right now, today. And so the perceived threat from Johnny is suddenly he's going to lose access to all of his tools for keeping his addiction alive. We're going to take away his money. He's got no money. He'll have to go out and steal. We're going to take away his car keys. He's going to have to walk. We're going to take away the access to the children, the things that maybe he's still getting some love from, who haven't understood the depths of his addiction. We're going to take away the things that he knows that he is dependent on, shelter, for him to use in. He's going to have to hit the streets. And so far, I've done maybe 60 or 70 interventions. I have never got to the point where the addict at this point hasn't accepted the help that we're giving them today. Because we're delivering this with complete love. We're giving them a graceful exit from their disease. We're saying, accept the help that we're giving you today, and you can keep everything, and we'll help you get the treatment for your addiction rather than leave you in your addiction. Accept the treatment that we're giving you today. I'm trained to set my staff off, like Jay at the back. Jay will go with the client if that client says, screw you, my disease is more important to me, my addiction is more important to me than the people I love, I'm going to go out on my own. So Jay or whoever will go with them. And suddenly he'll walk off and he'll go into an off license, and Jay will be there and tell the off license not to serve them. Or they'll go to a dealer and Jay will be there and Jay will tell the dealer not to serve them, he'll confront them. So that's the training that we've got, that we'll go out and we'll follow through, and we will literally screw up their using at every point, or we'll screw up their ability to score alcohol or whatever it is. But I've never had it come to that. Only the threat of that is another anchor for them to make the choice to accept the help that we're trying to give them today. So every time that we've gone through this process and the family have got the courage to follow through, I've had a success rate, which is really worth a round of applause. Absolute love, complete honesty, and firm boundaries with tough love. And that tough love is going to save their life. And thank you for the round of applause. It was a bit facetious, but the reality is that I haven't had an unsuccessful intervention since we've started, and I've been doing them since 2008, so 8 or 9 years. But let me say this, there are 3 cases now where the family have not had the courage to follow through with the tough love process and have dithered or waited before following through. And we had one recently, didn't we, Jay? And in that case, it was a drug addict, and the other 2 cases, it was an alcoholic. In all 3 of those cases, the person has died. Their addiction has killed them before the family have come to their senses and woken up to the fact that this requires tough love, not the regular love of just saying yes and giving them whatever they want. This takes courage. It takes a lot of strength for a family to stand up to the addiction that they've been living with for so long. But the consequences of you not going through with this are fatal. So that's the sad statistic that we have. I'm going to come back to this slide, actually. So the alumni, this is an American quote, the alumni remember the professors who loved them enough to demand their best work. And that's a similar analogy. If you can love your addict enough that you can push them through where it gets uncomfortable for them, they're going to get a result. But if you just let them carry on messing around at school or whatever it is, they're never going to produce their best work. It's a great analogy. The 5 ethical principles of a sober interventionist, this is what I train all my team in. 1, do no harm, and that includes the family members as well as the addict and the alcoholic. Improve the situation and make it better for everyone. I'm trained to expect the addict not to follow through, and that's not been my experience, but in America where we're trained, We expect, even if the addict doesn't follow through, to at least leave the family with some sort of closure. I've not had that experience yet, but that's how we're trained. Respect for all those involved. Now, I've worked with some families that is super dysfunctional, where there is incest and rape and all types of stuff going on between the addict and other family members, and I have to put aside any prejudices that I may have and treat everyone with respect and learn that this is a family in their environment, and I have to work to a large degree at their level with their family values, and it can be tough, but I need to show respect. I need to be fair to all. I need to make sure that the little sister gets as much to say as she needs to say as the matriarchal figure, or the big grandfather when he wants to say his thing. Everybody needs to have the space to say their part when we do the intervention. And I need to be compassionate. I have to have love and kindness and patience and tolerance, and be pretty good at forgiving and all these sorts of things. It's hard work, and more often than not, I will come away from an intervention and I will start crying. So using the evidence gathered from all the different modalities, what's the best way to treat substance and hedonistic addictions? Hedonistic addictions is like drinking, gambling, drugging, I guess sex, and eat, drink, and be messy sort of stuff. So again, I took these these 7 things, and I stole them from the people that train me, who are Love First, is their group, and they're in America, and they're the pioneers of modern day interventions. And they presented the 7 proven steps, and I've just adapted the language and made it more British as opposed to American. So these are the 7 proven steps for permanent, happy, and healthy addiction recovery. Number 1, positive rewards and negative consequences. So when the addict is doing something that we know to be right, we need to treat them and celebrate with them. And when they're misbehaving, and we know them to be misbehaving, we need to not reward them at all. So if someone is graduating from rehab and they come home and they have a drink on the way, that's not okay. We don't say, "Oh, you'll get over it." We say that's not okay, and we confront them about that. But at the same time, when they do make it home without drinking, we say, "Well done. Here you go, let me make dinner for you, or let me help you in some way." So we need to reward them when they're doing well, but we must not reward them or let them off the hook if they start slipping back into their addiction. Frequent random drug tests are not that usual in the UK, but it's something that we like to do with sober services. Not because we don't trust the person, but because we don't trust the person. The reality is that the addict, as I said at the beginning, is the master at lying, cheating, stealing, and baffling and manipulating. And in many cases, they will persuade the family members that they're sober, and we know they're still drinking. So we've introduced alcohol testing or drug testing on clients where we suspect that to be the case. And at that point, they can't hide anymore. Abstinence-based therapeutic programs. And the best example I have are the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which are free and able to be accessed by anyone all over the UK or all over the world. And other such programs, we've got our own program that's very similar. Most of my staff are in 12-step recovery, but not all of us. And we have programs that work for people that want a 12-step solution and for people that don't want a 12-step solution. Sober Services is open-minded, and we'll try and find whatever works best for the client and whatever the client wants best. But we'll only acknowledge what the client wants once that client is sober. Because while they're still using, the odds are they're going to want to carry on finding a program that keeps them using. The best example I can give you, based on my own experience, was when I was a heroin user. I would go and get prescribed methadone, and therefore suddenly I didn't have to scrounge money each day to go and score methadone. So it allowed me to not be junkie sick and then go ahead and commit more crime in order to fuel an ever increasing crack habit. So giving me alternative drugs is not sorting out my addiction, it's simply allowing me to explore other forms of addiction. Prescribing narcotics to treat narcotic addiction is bonkers. It's just nuts. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, because I'm grateful that I had those opportunities to use Subutex and methadone, but in the long term, it does prolong the disease. When we see people that are just parked on methadone for years and years and years, you're not giving someone a quality of life. There's no real value to their life if all they're doing is spending their life going towards a methadone clinic, picking up their juice, and then spending the rest of their time worrying about where they can get more cocaine from. So the first part of any treatment needs to start from a place of abstinence, in our opinion. Recovery-based role models, so recovery mentors, life coaches, all these types of people. So you have someone that you can share with, you can get honest with, vulnerable with. I can reveal myself to them, and I have a sponsor, and I still sponsor people, and I do that in my own time, and yet in my professional life I work with people, and I have people that work with me. And I think that's a good metaphor in all of us on a personal development journey. And modified lifestyles, you need to change. There's no point in giving up the drink and the drugs and then staying in exactly the same environment. I believe that recovery is about drawing a line in the sand, stepping over it, and creating a new destination in our life. It's like creating a new path, a new journey, a new chapter. And if you read my book, you'll see that the life after my addiction is drastically different and immensely more fun. Well, I don't know if it's more fun, but it's just fun in a different direction. And I had a great time when I was out there drinking and drugging for many years. I was a successful DJ in the 90s. I was a successful trafficker and smuggler of drugs across Europe, and I used to put on huge, enormous raves with tens of thousands of people every weekend, and I had a great time. Sex, drugs, and techno music. But my journey in recovery has been just as eventful and memorable, and I've had so many more colourful adventures in recovery as I did in my journey beforehand. And I think that the lifestyle that we change into and that we become once we find sobriety is far more rewarding in the long run. So please don't let the person that you care about off the hook. If they get into recovery, please encourage them to start saying yes and start putting their hand up to expectations, to offers or life adventures, or things come in our path, and a lot of us can be quite scared to see that. But if you step forward and just take advantage of an adventure, just go for a modified lifestyle. Just maintain your sobriety, travel, do whatever you need to do. Active and sustained monitoring, accountability, kind of like with the sponsor earlier, but this is on a more professional level, and it's more from a place of that addict taking responsibility for their recovery and being accountable to another person in some format or some way. And regular counterbalance of relapsing through 12-step fellowship meetings. They're a free resource. We really ought to take advantage of them and enjoy them. The 12-step fellowships are free. They're all over the world. And they're a regular way of counterbalancing the fact that addicts go out and use. Now, addicts can get turned off by 12-step fellowships. That's fine. You can substitute other groups or fellowships of people. I'm a member of the London Yes group. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. But there are other ways where you can hang out in crowds and maintain your sobriety and live in and move in healthy worlds. So if you've got any questions, please wait until the end because I'm quite low on time. But we do all of these treatments, which are listed kind of there, I suppose. And every family is going to need a bespoke treatment. So there's no one answer that I can give you right now. But everyone we work with has to have a tailor-made plan that's going to suit them and their addicts and their family. So we're open-minded to all of that. I have got time, and I'm going to go back. Are there any questions at this point? Yes, hello. Do we get a mic? Sorry. I can't hear you anyway. And it allows me to smile a bit while I'm waiting. What's your name? Marilyn.
I don't know how you got Marilyn.
Bavril.
Hi there, I'm Bhavna.
Can you turn that one on, please? Hello. Up. Hello.
Hi, I'm Bhavna.
Bhavna. Hello.
You talked about this being triggered by family. What if people are homeless and don't have family? How can you help then? I do work with the homeless, and we keep losing people.
I have built a lot of time working one-on-one with people that don't have the resources, and I will spend a lot of time working with people who don't have the resources. But at that stage, that person needs to approach me privately, and they're going to need the willingness. Interventions, it takes up a lot of time, it's a lot of resources, and it's taken a lot of training, and that really is a private sector service. The NHS would never endorse interventions. It wouldn't understand the fact, because it's not client-driven. It's driven by the family, it's not driven by the addict. And the reason why it's not driven by the addict is because the addict doesn't want to stop. The addict is perfectly happy with the NHS or any other provider taking care of them, and they may not have the desire to change. So it's the sad reality is that the NHS would not endorse what I do because it's not patient choice. It's a structured way of confronting them with love, but it's almost like we're ganging up on their disease, and so it doesn't work in the statutory sector. Is that your question? So for people that are homeless and things like that, I work with those guys on a one-on-one basis, in the 12-step fellowship rooms. I work with those guys all the time, and I come from that background myself, and I'll donate my time through charities to do that sort of stuff. But at that level, that individual needs to have a relationship with me. It can't be that anyone else approaching me to go and help with them. It has to be authentic. Does that answer it? Any other questions? I'm much better at questions than I am with structured slideshows. Yes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm actually quite interested in working with addictions myself. I've got background in nutritional therapy, in the process of doing counselling, finishing counselling qualification. So would you be able to answer who do you work with, and if people are interested in working with you?
Who do I work with?
But, from the point of view staff rather than, client stuff. No.
Well, we can talk. I'm always open-minded to staff. It's more about creating the demand as well, but there's not enough females working in the sector with addictive disease. There's a lot of females working with addictions, doing coaching and hypnotherapy and that level, but with addictive disease, it's hugely understaffed by women. So there's certainly space for you, and I can have a conversation with you about that. Whereabouts do you live?
I'm in Ipswich in Suffolk.
You got a car? Got a
not
passport?
at the moment. Sorry?
Got a passport?
I do.
Yeah. I mean, we work all over. We happen to be British, but we work all over Europe, Africa, and the Middle East.
I'm actually Polish originally, so I'm bilingual as well. There's quite a large Polish community. I work as an interpreter.
Sure.
I've come across quite a lot of people who are, like you were saying, being let down by the NHS because they weren't really sort of being helped. But unlike the people who are resident in this country, a lot of them here on their own, so they haven't got the support of the community to start with, and I find that in itself is really often the driving force why people will carry on using.
Yeah.
They haven't got the motivation, anyone to be there to support them.
Yeah, there is a lot of problems when I think about people that are reliant on the NHS, and I do not work in the statutory sector. My history was building rehabs, and I used to sell beds to the statutory sector, and that's fine. But when I set up sober services, it was primarily for the private sector, because I can take an inquiry and I can make magic happen now, rather than going through the waiting process and the means testing and the whole bureaucracy of it all. It's a very different culture that we work in, and that's really why we work all over the world doing this sort of stuff. So I ask if you've got a passport. And if you speak multiple languages, that's always useful. I've got to do some stuff in French, and I haven't spoken French in 20 years. But thank you. I am running out of time, but I will take another question if there is one.
I'm just wondering what a typical week would look like when you work with the addict, or what's a typical week?
For me or for anyone? I mean, I was in Holland last week, I'm in Belgium next week, I'm in France the week after that. Sometimes I come home and I use my gym.
But not for you, for the addict. What would you work with them?
When we're doing rehab at home, we will work with that client at their level.
So it's home-based?
Sometimes. Or we can refer them into residential treatment as well, depending on their needs and if we think that's a suitable fit. And that's a lot less expensive, for instance, than rehab at home, which is about the same price as a luxury rehab, so it depends on your budget. But rehab at home is normally for people that don't have that want the anonymity of staying at home and working, maybe an actor who needs to be on set. So we'll take them on set, they'll do their stuff. At the end of the day, they come home, we work with them therapeutically, we go get dinner, We take them to meetings. So we have to work around their schedule. When I'm working with a family in a rehab at home, again, what does that person want to be doing? We've got a guy in Belgium, so we're getting him exercising, we're getting him going out, getting his driving license. He's in his mid-20s. We're getting him to change his diet. We're getting him to look at in a holistic way all of his affairs. We're changing his relationship with video gaming or computer gaming, looking at all of his addictions, and we're there 24/7, so we have a permanent staff there. That sort of stuff. So I don't know why any of you came here today, but I've got 1 minute to go through this. If you have any questions, please come and talk to us just outside. All of our prices are available upon request. Interventions, we'll come and we'll talk to you, and we'll come over to your house and we'll fit it all out. We do not want to meet the addict until the very end, so don't tell the addict that we're coming if we're going to do an intervention. Really important, or they'll start planning how to beat that. I do have my own sober coaching home study, so if you know people that do not want to engage with us but they just want to work for themselves from home, they can get the workbook and the DVD, and they do it in the privacy of I designed it for stay-at-home mothers. That was what was in my mind when I designed it. It's not a 12-step sober coaching program. It's based on NLP with motivation and interviewing, CBT, and other practicalities thrown in there. So it's a very interesting document, and it can be tailored to other addictions as well. And I think, so that is normally at $497, and there are links that you can find that sells it at $297. But I think we're doing, if you go and speak to the guys outside, you can get it for $197, and then they'll also give you a consultation. Or if you know someone that really needs this and you want to commit, then they can do a 3-month coaching program with one of my guys, and again they'll talk to you about that outside. And again, that normally is over £4,000 for 3 months. But I was persuaded to sell it for £1,000 less for 3 months, which is like under £1,000 a month, or £2,500 if you pay in full this week. But do talk to the guys and let them set you up with a consultation and come over and speak to you. And if you need anything more severe than just that's just for the home study and the coaching stuff. If you need a more permanent solution, such as rehab or treatment or interventions, then we really need to come and talk to you privately and discuss all that. So any more questions? Sorry, I've got no time, but I will be right outside, and I will start smiling again once I get outside. And your world will drastically change once you stop giving yourself reasons why you can't do the things that are holding you back, and you start giving yourself reasons why you can. That's kind of like the mission about getting you into recovery and just changing your life. So please do come and chat to us. I hope you've had a good time, and I do speak really fast, and sometimes I forget to smile, but I'm actually really quite friendly when I'm off the stage. Thank you.